Alright, so finally, the official guidelines for assessment under the new normal has been already released. So they call this one DepEd Order 31 series of 2020, and it's entitled the Interim Guidelines for Assessment and Grading in the light of the Basic Education Learning Continuity Plan. So this memorandum was dated back October 2 series of 2020, and today, ladies and friends, we are going to have a very detailed discussion as to the main guidelines as to the issuance. So we are hoping that all teachers will be able to grasp how assessment will be done under the new normal and what are the most important changes, what are the principles. So please go ahead and listen to this discussion. Actually, you have two options. You can listen to the discussion while doing something. At the same time, you can also download the PowerPoint presentation that I'm sharing to you. This is a detailed discussion regarding how to go about assessment under the new normal. So before you download the PowerPoint presentation, I would like to request you to please support our channel so that we can do more videos. So go ahead and subscribe and share our channel to all the teachers that you knew who will find all this discussion very useful. Don't forget also to like the video, share it to your friends, share it in Facebook, and comment in the comment section to help with YouTube algorithm so that we can reach more teachers and inform them regarding the new guidelines of assessment under the new normal. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about what are the different contents as to our discussion today. So first of all, we're going to talk about the rationale of the interim guidelines for assessment under DepEd Order 31 series of 2020. And then we'll proceed to the discussion of the definition of terms. And then we'll talk about policy statement. And after doing that, we'll be talking about the exact procedures and how to conduct assessment under this new normal. And then we'll talk about how you're going to go about planning the assessment procedures. And then also conducting assessment remotely, since let's not forget that we are implementing distance learning as of the moment. So there is a need for us to discuss how we can remotely do assessment in this new scenario. And then we'll talk about how to go about doing feedback and remediation, grading and promotion. Under this part, we'll be talking about the new grading system. Although there has been slight changes in the percentage, we're also going to talk about how you go about doing that for every subject, depending on the subject that you have. How do you grade written works? How do you grade performance tasks? So we'll be talking about that, and then we'll talk about the role of technology in assessment, and then we'll talk about monitoring and evaluation. So those are the contents of our discussion today. So hopefully we'll be able to stay with me from start to finish. So this is a must know for all teachers right now. We need to be aware as to how to go about assessment, since we'll be having our classes on October 5. So you need to be ready. All right, so let's proceed now. Let's talk about the rationale of this DepEd order. So as we all know, this issuance is a means to adapt to the implementation of the alternative learning modalities. So we're doing this to adapt and to ensure that learners achieve the essential curricular goals. As we all know, we are in a pandemic. This calls for a creative and innovative ways of designing optimal learning experiences in assessing the learning process. So the principle adhered to by DepEd Order 8 series of 2015 still holds true. So let's not forget about that. DepEd Order 8 is still in effect. However, there might be some changes as to specific issuances that we will be discussing today. So just be aware that some of the guidelines are currently being changed, but all the others are still in force. So it should be used to inform and improve classroom practices as well as promote learning outcomes. So the principle that has been the advocacy of DepEd Order 8 still holds true, that assessment should be used to inform and improve our classroom practices. Remember, assessment is a feedback tool that helps us adjust the way we teach and the way we help our learners, so as to really make our instruction more inclusive and open to all. And then under distance and blended learning, we should utilize alternative tools without creating undue pressure on teachers, learners, and their families. So basically, one of our observation is that under this DepEd order, we see that DepEd has really provided us with a lot of samples and tools that we can use, especially in terms of rubrics. So the principle here is that we should utilize these tools without, as much as possible, creating undue pressure to learners and their families, and also including the teachers. So I think this is one of the reason why the DepEd order really took a little while to be released. However, it's now released now, and it's very timely for the opening of classes. So we should be aware of the guidelines of this DepEd order. And before we proceed, I would like to inform everyone that our insights that we are sharing here are personal insights. So remember that this DepEd order is currently the law. We can see here the exact words given by the DepEd order. However, all my commentaries or insights are from my personal. So interpretation, you need to also consider how this is interpreted in your respective regions. However, you can see here the exact guidelines. So, you might as well as have your own interpretation as well. So our purpose here is really to see how these guidelines might affect our instruction, and at the same time give you the opportunity to have a heads up as to the different guidelines being implemented under this new DepEd order. Okay, so I'm hoping that you'll learn something out from our discussion at the same time. All right, so let's proceed to the scope. Remember that this DepEd order covers the whole Philippines because this is an DepEd order. So this issuance covers all public elementary and secondary schools. And let us just emphasize that private schools, technical and vocational institutions, and higher education institutions, including state and local university and colleges who are offering K-12 basic education programs, are encouraged to implement these interim policy guidelines. And remember, private schools and institutions are permitted. They're free to modify these policy guidelines in accordance to their philosophy, vision, mission with approval, as long as there is approval from their respective DepEd regional offices. Right. So let's proceed now to the definition of terms. So these are just few of the important terms that we need to consider as we study this DepEd order. So first of all, what is classroom assessment? Take note that this is an ongoing process of identifying, gathering, organizing, and interpreting quantitative and qualitative information about what learners know and can do. So let's emphasize the word ongoing process, meaning as you do your instruction, it should be an ongoing process of feedback, a form of feedback mechanism for you to create insights as to what the learners know and what they can do. Okay, and at the same time, this is a means for us to really improve our instruction, and at the same time for the learner side, for them to improve the way they are learning. Alright, so formative assessment, another term that we need to learn, is a process that involves teachers using evidence about what learners know and can do to inform and improve their teaching. So this process, through the teacher's immediate feedback, enables students to take responsibility of their own learning and identify areas where they do well and where they need help. So this is another form of assessment. So from the word formative, meaning to form. So it involves teachers using evidence for us to see if learners are really learning or not. Okay, and I mentioned this a while ago. If you're the teacher, it shapes how you do your instruction. So you can adjust, meaning are they really learning? So you do this, what you call formative assessment, for you to have a feedback mechanism as to whether they are learning or not. On the side of the learners, formative assessment is a way for them to self-reflect. Okay, so this is a form of, improving independent learning. So helping them see if they are really learning or not as of the moment. So, there is a higher sense of responsibility if learners will be able to develop this form of metacognition, looking at themselves as to the best way they can learn and reflecting if, that approach is really working or not. So that is something that we are currently developing, and formative assessment plays a very important role in how learners learn or become independent learners. Right. So we also have what you call summative assessment. So if formative assessment is just for the sake of feedback, summative assessment is for the sake of, judgment and our way of really learning if the child are absorbing or mastering the essential learning competencies that we have provided to them. So as you can see in the definition, it is an assessment that is usually administered toward the end So it's usually at the end of, examples of this are the periodical test before, which is now eliminated. So that's one of the trivia for for this year. There is no periodical examination. It's used to judge learners' progress as to the amount of skills which is acquired of the learners. Okay, so again, this is also reported in the report card and other official documents. So this is what you call summative assessment. And the fourth one is grading. So grading is the way of reporting assessment data by assigning value to the results as a record of students' ability, achievement, or progress. So I think that is self-explanatory. So we always do grading, even before. So that's part of our job. Right? So we have policy. We'll now proceed now to the policy guidelines, right? So the Department of Education is committed in ensuring the continuity of education while looking for other health, safety, and well-being of all. So it's for all, the learners, the teachers, and the personnel, right? So schools must adopt assessment and grading practices that can most meaningfully support students' development, respond to varied contexts at this time. This has been emphasized under these policy principles that schools must actually adapt and be able to consider the different contexts, especially right now that we are experiencing this pandemic. One of the basic principles that we need to consider, right? So we also have the following principles. So we need to be aware that whatever we do with our assessment under this new normal, it should adhere to the following policy principles. First of all, assessment should be holistic and authentic in capturing the attainment of the most essential learning competencies. So as much as possible, it should measure the whole of the child's learning, and then it should be authentic in a way, gives insights as to whether the child is really doing something to the community or having his or her skills be of use to the community that he is in. Right. So assessment is integral for understanding student learning and development. So remember that assessment will actually help learners develop that sense of independence. So you need to be aware of this. All right. So another principle that we need to consider is the variety of assessment strategies is necessary with formative assessment, taking priority to inform teaching and promote growth and mastery. So I think I mentioned this a while ago. So when you do formative assessment, you should try to include as diverse assessment strategies as possible for them to, for you as a teacher to adjust your instruction, at the same time promote independent learning on the part of the learners. Right. So assessment and feedback should be shared responsibility among teachers, learners, and their families. So we'll talk about this later. What are their responsibilities? So it is again a shared responsibility not only of the teacher, but that includes the learners and their families too. And assessment and grading should have a positive impact on learning. So without this, I think assessment will be useless if it doesn't have any impact to learning. Remember, assessment is the reins that support the learning of the child. So again, it's like a rein for a horse. It provides guidance, it provides a way to put learning in the right path. So that is how important assessment is. All right, so policy outcomes. So what outcome do we want from the policies that we are trying to implement? So number one, teachers, school leaders, parents should commit to uphold the integrity of learning and instruction in the context of distance education. So I think in our previous videos, we have talked about one of the major challenges in this new normal is that everything is now open notes. No, when we are having distance learning, they have access to different kinds of resources. They can open their internet, they can browse, they can download. So this is our way of addressing this fact that we cannot deny. So we should try to commit for the integrity of learning and instruction in the context of distance education to ensure that all learners are fairly assessed and graded in the continuation of education during this health crisis. That's the reason why we need to make sure that parents are well aware, because parents might be the one who will be answering the modules if it's a hard copy of the module. So we should let them be aware that we should try to uphold the integrity of whatever we are doing, including assessment and instruction. And then emphasize that learning standards shall be attained with the provision of reasonable leniency and considerations for possible difficulties met by the learner. Right? So we need to consider that not all of them has internet connection. So we need to provide options, and we need to be considerate as a teacher. So these are one of, we need to consider this. This is one of the policy outcomes that the policy is designed for. Okay. And then we also have the following procedures. All right. So distance learning poses challenges for teachers and learners in the conduct of assessment. So what are our limitations? Remember, limitations in giving immediate feedback. You are not there physically all the time, unlike face-to-face instruction. And then the need to account for different contexts in designing, implementing, and grading assessment tasks. So we need to consider this as teachers. Our learners have different contexts, different situations. So we need to make it equitable for them, right? So we need to consider their current situation. So we need to do a lot of asking, researching as much as possible. What is their setting? We need to ask questions so that we'll be able to understand the context of our learners, right? So we also have this one. So to address these challenges, the teachers, learners, and parents and guardians should play significant roles and responsibilities. We're going to talk about that one by one, and we will discuss each of their responsibilities here. So let's start with the teachers. So the teachers are given the task to design the assessment to allow for flexibility in multiple modalities. So I would like to emphasize on this. Let's say, for example, you have this online class, synchronous. All right. So you have your students with you face to face, but using online modalities, right? So what if their internet connection will fail? So are there options for that child to submit it in a way which is hard copy? So we need to consider that, right? So teachers should design assessment that provides learners, that is equitable depending on their situation. Okay, so there might be possibilities with that, because even we teachers will experience loss of connection from our service providers every now and then, considering the kind of internet connection we have here in the Philippines. So teachers, we need to be considerate in this part. So we need to allow flexibility options for our learners in case this happens. It should not be a reason for them to lose or to fail in our subject just because they haven't submitted it on time and for a thing that is not their fault at all. Okay, so communicating to learners and parents and guardians the design and the standards for grading the assessment. So number one, second responsibility again is we should be able to communicate to the learners, and not only to the learners. Remember, you need to communicate also with the parents and guardians. So more like a call center, right? So we need to call and to check on the parents every now and then, including our learners. Okay, and also you need to communicate the standards for grading the assessment. So you need to have a good set of standards, and what are your expectations, what do you want to happen as to the assessment. That should be communicated to the parent as well as to the learners. Then another responsibility is setting up mechanisms to monitor, record progress remotely. So how do we monitor if learners are really learning? So those are one of our responsibilities. And then as much as possible, we need to give timely feedback. It should be on time. The more time you spend before you give feedback, the less effective it is and it will become. So that's, in research, if you just look for it, the gap between your feedback to influence good behavior as to learning will greatly decrease if you spend more time, right, before you give that timely feedback. So timeliness is very important, and then it should be constructive. It should be encouraging, and then other relative feedback for our learners. So that is our responsibility. We give feedback to our learners. And then facilitating the remediation for learners who need further guidance. So if there are issues, problems, which I think there will be many of our learners having difficulties, because even before we've experienced face-to-face, a lot of learners are having difficulties. Now imagine in our situation right now, how much more would that be? So a lot of our learners would really struggle because not all of them, only a few of them can really do independent learning. So we as teachers should consider this, and we should facilitate remediation, and school leaders should actually encourage remediation and even do not discourage teachers from doing remediation by putting stigma as to the non-performance of learners. Whether we like it or not, students will be struggling, right? So that is expected. So we need to be transparent. We need to be, let's avoid putting stigma as to learners who are having difficulties. It's not the fault of the teacher. Let's expect learners to have difficulties, and let us be there to help them. Those are the responsibilities of the teachers. How about the learners? So learners are expected to be proactive. So they should know this, and this should be included in our orientation this coming October 5. Right? So learners are expected to be proactive in updating their teacher of their situation. So as a learner who is having difficulties, you need to really communicate these difficulties with your teacher. And teacher, please don't be angry if the child is struggling, right? So but the learner should be open, should be proactive for any situation or challenges that you have encountered. So if there are learners who are listening right now, please be open to your teacher. Provide this feedback so that the teacher can provide you with the needed remediation if you have struggles. And then we have the non-mandatory self-monitoring tool may be accomplished independently or with the assistance of their parent or guardian if necessary. So I'll show to you the self-monitoring tool that you can fill in, right? So this is very important. It's not required, but this is highly recommended. So this is how it looks like. This is the sample self-monitoring tool. This is also found in the DepEd Order. The DepEd Order, by the way, is 256 pages. So you have there a handbook for everything that you need to learn about assessment. So you see here your name, then you see here what year you are, write the name of your guardian, and then this is regarding the inclusive dates. And then you have here para sa mag-aaral, then you write here anong mga asignatura ang napag-aralan mo ngayon. So you write here the things that you have learned. And kamusta ka sa aralin ngayon? Alin sa mga ito ang madali para sa iyo at bakit? So you need to answer all this. Then, may mga gusto ka bang itanong sa iyong guro tungkol sa mga aralin? Ilista mo dito ang iyong mga tanong. So you see here Monday, Tuesday, Miyerkules, Huwebes, Biyernes, Sabado. So you may write here your all your questions for the teachers. And then you also have for the parents. Nagawa ba ang iyong anak ang kanyang mga gawain sa paralan ngayong araw? So nagawa ng bata, you check this one. Nagawa ng bata, may tulong ng iba. So you just tell the truth as much as possible. Di nagawa. Right? Kamusta ang pag-aaral ng iyong anak? May gusto ka bang iulat, itanong sa kanyang guro, isulat dito ang iyong mga puna, suwestyon o tanong. So you may write. Again, this is Monday, Tuesday, so on and so forth. And then para sa guro, mga komento at sagot. You may write here. Right? So again, you may ask the teacher, with the assistance of the teacher to parents to really fill up that form. So for parents and guardians, these are your responsibilities again. DepEd aims to develop independent learners who can study on the assessment on their own. So remember that. However, in the school year's implementation of distance learning, parents and guardians play a crucial role in guiding their children and adapting to the changes of distance learning process. Right. Remember, your role as a parent is very important. So, thus, only when necessary, parents and guardians are requested to assist in the assessment process by, number one, these are your responsibilities. Parents, if you're watching and listening right now, so it is, you need to communicate with the teacher. Remember that, your role to communicate. You don't have to really teach the child if you cannot do it, but please communicate to the teacher as to the difficulties and provide updates to the child's situation, progress, and challenges encountered. Don't answer the module for the sake of your child. Your child will not learn anything. right? So guiding their children in accomplishing the assessment task or monitoring the tools designed by their teacher, right? So you need to be aware of that, right? So how do we do and go about the planning process, right? So these are for the teachers, since this is our responsibility, no? We need to plan for assessment. So teachers need to be creative and flexible in assessing student learning while still adhering to the principles of quality assessment practice with safety, health, and well-being foremost in mind. So assessment decisions must be made in the best interest of all learners. Okay, so again, you need to be creative, flexible, and you need at the same time, while being creative, do not forget that you need to remember the safety, health, and well-being of the learners that are under your wing. Right? So teachers should ensure that all assessment activities, number one, these are the things you need to consider, align with the most essential learning competencies or the milk, then they are valid and transparent. So you need to tell the children or the learners what are your standards, right? So they should be aware of the rubrics, the criteria that you are using. It should be fair and inclusive and equitable, meaning, their demographics, their social demographics, their income should not be the reason why they will fail from your assessment. Remember that. So please do not judge them based on their income, so or based from their situation. Okay, so it should be inclusive in a sense that everyone has the opportunity to really answer it by providing them options as to their current context, are practical and manageable for both learners and teachers, right? So it should not be very something that is very hard to do. It should be manageable and practical, and then give learners a range of ways to demonstrate their learning. So there are many ways to really show that you are learning, right? So not only through paper or pen or through written works, you can actually perform it and show it. So give options to your learners. It should be through a range of ways. Provide timely and accurate information as basis for feedback. So you always tell them if they forgot to submit, right, an assignment or a quiz or even a formative assessment, you need to make them aware as to the results. Okay, so that should be all considered, right? So in distance learning modalities, teachers shall design assessment bearing the assumption that learners will asynchronously take them and have access to various resources. Again, as I've mentioned, when we do assessment, remember that learners can readily open other sources, right? So they can open their notes, no one is watching them because you're far away from them. You cannot tell them no cheating. That should be considered, and this can be addressed by making your assessment more authentic in a sense. So what is authentic assessment? I've already discussed that in my previous videos. You can check it out in my channel. However, I'll just tell you, authentic assessment is more like activities that will help the learner to solve real problems that they have encountered, preferably in their homes, in their community, right? So that's authentic assessment. Then we also have this, when you design methods to use, because we are now in planning, you should consider the following questions. So what is the purpose of assessment? So you need to ask, why am I assessing this child? What is the purpose? And what competency will I assess? What method would best allow learners to demonstrate that they have learned, considering the learning modality that I'm currently having with this child? And then you also consider the method that will make it easy to gather evidence of the learner's progress over time. So consider that always, because you might not have the time to really organize all the information that you have gathered. And then, will the assessment be completed individually or in groups? Are you going to do that by group? And if it's by group, how will you ensure that everyone has participated, right? So will the assessment be taken at the same time or submitted within a specific period, right? Or will you extend depending on the current situation? You need to ask that question. And then, how will class size affect the assessment that will be conducted, right? Especially if there are so many of them and you have this performance task that each one of them will present something. So if you're going to have that assessment, that will take time. So what platform can you use? You can use YouTube so that they can upload it there, whatever it is. All right. So you need to ask that question. And how can I use technology to help? Okay. So ask that question. Right. So for the purpose of informed teaching and promote growth and mastery. So formative assessment should, number one, remember again, the purpose of formative assessment is number one, inform teaching and promote growth and mastery. So that will come out from the principles test. Don't forget. All right. So number one, establish clear learning targets and success criteria. So in order to promote this two, inform teaching and promote growth mastery, you need to do the following. So number one, again, clear learning targets and success criteria. And then elicit useful evidence of learning. Provide timely and effective feedback. Then engage your learners in assessing and improving each other's work. So learners learn best when they're interacting with each other. Don't forget that. And then increase ownership of their learning. Again, we are doing our best to help learners become independent. So formative assessment plays a very important role on this part. Right, so Annex A provides a matrix of sample techniques for each formative assessment strategy. So I'm going to show to you Annex A. Teachers are encouraged to adopt these techniques where appropriate. So Annex A looks like this, right? So you see there, you can do asynchronous or synchronous on this side. So asynchronous are those, through email, text. It's not really simultaneous learning, instructor and student. All right, so synchronous if you're doing phone call, video call, live chat. So these are your different formative assessment strategies. So this DepEd order actually provides us with a lot of details as to how to go about assessment, right? So these are strategies. There are many more. So I'm going to you can check the video description. I'm going to share to you the whole issuance so that you'll be guided. And the whole issuance are actually 256 pages to be exact. Okay, so a lot of resources, but the issuance is only up to 10. Okay, so all of the rest is really all about attachments and resources that we can use for rubrics, for grading, and etc. Okay, so this is how it looks like. Right. So let's talk about summative assessment. So we're done with formative assessment. Again, the two purpose of formative assessment is to provide us with the means to improve the way we teach and to promote independent learning. But remember, the formative assessment is not recorded, but summative assessment are, and it is used to grade learners' progress. So written work shall be administered to assess essential knowledge and understanding through quizzes, long unit tests, and then items should be distributed across cognitive process dimension using combination of selected response and constructed response formats so that all are adequately covered. So summative assessment are of two kinds. We have written works, more like a pencil paper test, right? So the other one, which we'll discuss later on, is performance task, which is more like an authentic assessment. So we ask them to perform, we sing, dance, have a speech, write a research paper, etc. So those are examples of performance tasks. But here we see here written works. Okay, and then we also have performance tasks on the other side. Performance tasks refer to assessment tasks that allow teachers to show that they know or are able to do in diverse ways. Again, I mentioned that a while ago. So you can do research project, written works, etc. Under Annex A provides a list of sample summative assessments that fall under performance tasks for the purpose of this policy. Right. So let's try to see what is Annex A. Right. So for whatever subject you're having right now, let's say for example your English, so you have here samples of summative assessment that you can do. So you can do written outputs, products, or performance tasks. So everything is there. Right. So for science teachers, these are your references. Again, in the video description, all you have to do is to click on the link. I provided you with the link to the issuance. Right. Okay. And then let's talk about performance tasks under summative assessment. So performance tasks must be designed to provide opportunities for learners to apply what they are learning to real life situations. In addition, teachers should take into consideration the following. So each task must be accompanied with clear directions and appropriate scoring tools. So if you do performance tasks, don't forget you need to have rubrics, rating scale, checklists to help learners demonstrate the learning. And then when you create your own judgment regarding their performance, you are more objective. Right? So teachers are advised to collaboratively design and implement performance tasks that integrate two or more competencies within or across subject areas. So complex tasks may be broken down into shorter tasks to be completed over longer periods of time. So you can also check Annex D for sample integrative assessment tasks. So learners must be given flexibility in the accomplishment of the performance tasks to consider time and resources available to them. So again, when you do and assign something to your learners, you need to consider their situation. Nonetheless, all learners should be assessed on the same competencies using the same scoring tool, right? So that's a very complex issue as to how do we go about really adjusting to the learner's context. Okay, so some of our learners, whether we like it or not, will actually be very lazy. So what do you think about this? Right? So you may comment in the comment section down below and give your insights. Okay. But let's not spread hate here. Right? So your insights and your possible solutions, because later on we'll discover that this DepEd order is actually very open to your suggestions, and we will know later how we can provide our suggestions. Right? So these are the guidelines as how you should do your performance tasks. So again, teachers must exercise their professional judgment in carrying out summative assessments, providing enough opportunities for learners to practice and to redo their work whenever necessary so that they can reach their learning targets with the least amount of pressure. So again, we need to consider their current situation. If they need to redo their work, since this will be used to judge their performance and it will be written in their card. So please be aware that these are very important. You know, we should adjust to the context of our learners. All right, so let's proceed now to another one. Teachers should set realistic expectation and use their professional judgment to find good balance between what is effective and what is feasible to accomplish remotely. Okay, so don't forget that one. So, DepEd is really looking forward to your own judgment as to what is good balance between what is effective, and then consider also that they need to do it remotely. So how do we go about conducting assessment remotely? So we need to consider the following. In communicating the assessment task, teachers must ensure the following details are explained. So first, objectives of the assessment task, then the roles of the learners, parents, and guardians, and then the procedures and the expected timeline, the standards, and the rubrics. Again, you need to communicate these one to your teachers, to your learners, and to their parents. The teacher must consult the learners and, when necessary, the parents' guardians to allow room for adjustment, flexibilities if you need it. All right. So you also need to consider how you should record the progress. So the collection and recording of evidences of learning is integral for monitoring student learning and development. So listed below are sample strategies for this purpose. You can do self-monitoring tools. You can check Annex E, consider the needs per key stage. Early grades needed assistance from parents, while older learners are expected to accomplish self-reflection tools on their own. So that is why we are recommending everyone to really use Annex E as much as possible. Then we can also do some check-ins of teachers with learner. So document that properly. Every time you check on the learner, teachers, please document it. And what is the feedback? What is the current situation? And then evidence of learning in the student's learning portfolio. So since we are doing distance learning, portfolio is very important for our learners and for you also to judge their current progress. Feedback and remediation. So how do we go about this one? To benefit student learning, both formative and summative assessment must be accompanied with timely, constructive, and meaningful feedback based on the learner's record of progress. In giving feedback, teachers need to maximize available communication options. So you can give, writing feedback output. You do it via text, using online channels, and among others. Annex F provide a guide to help frame decisions on appropriate feedback to learners. So you can check Annex F. Again, I've provided you with the link with the whole issuance in the video description. All you have to do is to subscribe and comment and like and share our video. Right. So consistent with DepEd Order 8 series of 2015, teachers should ensure that learners receive mediation when they earn raw scores which are consistently below expectation. So in summative assessment by the 5th week of any quarter. This will prevent a student from failing in any learning area at the end of the year. So this is actually an old issuance from DepEd Order 8 series of 2015. Every 5th of the week, since there are 10 weeks in one grading period, in the 5th week or in the middle of the grading period, you should be able to do your remediation when the learners are consistently showing low scores in their summative assessment or even in your formative assessment. Grading and promotion. All right. So how do you go about this one? So the challenges brought to light by the coronavirus pandemic, specifically the implementation of the different distance learning modalities, have sparked a large conversation about the role grades play in student learning, prompting education sectors to rethink traditional grading schemes. So the grading system implemented in this policy provides reasonable leniency to learners who are put to larger disadvantage by the pandemic, but at the same time does not compromise the integrity and the principles of assessment and grading. So I think that is evident in our previous discussion, but we need to adjust to the context of our learners. All right, so grading and promotion. Written works and performance tasks shall be administered to assess the content and performance standards that describe the knowledge, abilities, and skills that the learners are expected to demonstrate. So these tasks could be designed to include the following. We can have student learning portfolio that students, all the evidence of learning within the grading period, including self-reflection, self-evaluations, and performance tasks, guided by rubrics and self-selected best outputs in the learning modules. We can also, very important guideline here, is that there should be a minimum of 4 written works and 4 performance tasks within the quarter. So right now, this is something new. So it has been made clear that we are expecting 4 written works and 4 performance tasks. So 4 for each within the quarter, preferably 1 in 2 weeks. So remember, there are 10 weeks in a grading period. So you have at least, and every 2 weeks you have at least 1, integrating 2 or more competencies as much as possible. So all competencies should be covered by the performance task. Example, a performance task can be used to assess science, math, and English all together for certain topics. So there could be a collaboration between the teachers regarding this one. So you can, just to see, because it might become very overwhelming for if all subjects will have all their, performance tasks in a different setting. So why not combine it in a way that you'll be checking a different aspect of their presentation or their performance? Okay, so that is our way of considering their situation too. Grading and promotion. Again, for the current school year, quarterly assessment shall not be administered. However, days allotted for quarterly assessment under DepEd Order 7 series of 2020 and the school calendar activities for the school 2020-21 may be used for the presentation of major performance for that quarter that addresses the performance standards. So again, focus on the performance standard. So quarterly examination were given a weight of 20%. So since it's not available anymore, so what we did was to allot the 10% to one to written works and the other one to performance tasks. So we see here the table 1, as we can see for AP, for English and ESP, 40% for written works and 60%. This is 100%. For science and math, we give more value to written works. The result and no written works and performances, they are equally important, so 50-50%. For MAPE, written work is very, it's lower of value, so 30%, and we give more prime to the performance task. So as we can see here, we have the weight distribution of summative assessment components for senior high school. So for all other subjects in the academic track, 40% for written works and 60%. For work immersion, we have 50-50 research. Okay, so we see here difference, but for TVL, we give more prime or more importance to the performance task. 70% na siya. So we have a sample computation here just to share to you. Okay, so we see here the sample computation. So there are 4 written works because minimum of 4. So this is the minimum number. And then 4 performance tasks. Right, so we add 18, 22, 20, 17, and if we add that, we'll get 7. Right? So how did we get 91 here? Well, 77 and 85, this is the total. So if you divide 77 to 85, you'll get 91, right? So this is a percentage score, 91%, right? So how did we get 36.4? Well, this 91% is 40%. So what is 40% of 91? We have 36.4%. We did the same here. So again, we add 12 plus 13 plus 19 plus 15. The total is 56. Divide this by 75 to get the percentage score. We have 75. And the weighted average is 75. What is 60% of 75? You have 45%. If we add this 2 here, we'll get our initial grade. 36.4 plus 45, we have 81.4. And how did we get 88? Well, up until now, the transmutation table is still true. So if we try to look at here, okay, so let's check. 81.4%. Let's look for 81.4% here. So 81.4% is somewhere here, 80 to 80, and it's 88. So let's try to see if it's 88. So we see here it's 88. Right? So that is how we compute it for English, AP, and ESP. The only difference with table 4 is that we're doing it in math and science. And instead of having the 40% and 60 here, we're having it 50% and 50% weighted average here. So 91 here is divided, the percentage score here of 91 is divided to 50%. That's the reason why we have 45.5 here. And then 75 is multiplied. By the way, this multiplied, okay? 75% times 50%. What is 50% of 75? We have 37.5%. And 83 again is the initial grade. But if you look at the transmutation table, 83 is equivalent to 89. So if we try to look for 83 here, again, that's found here in this part, 82, because 83 is between 82.4 to 83.99. So that's the reason why we have 89 as the final grade. So that's the reason why we have 89 here. Right? So I hope that's clear. Right? Okay, so let's proceed now to this one. The only difference is that this time it's 30% lower for written works, and then we have higher for performance tasks. Okay? So again, the transmutation table, which is Appendix B in DepEd Order A 2015, shall still be used in this grading system. So if you want to have a Microsoft Excel that will automatically compute for your subject, go ahead and comment and request in the comment section so that we can provide you with that. All you have to do is to edit our previous class record. So we can actually do another video for that to help you with the computation under the new normal. Okay, so this is the transmutation table, right? So the role of technology. So technology plays a substantial role in helping teachers in the development of communication and implementation. I would like to inform you that if you check on Annex G, there are specific suggestions on how to use technology in helping you do assessment. So you have options there. Let's say, for example, you have students who are having problems with technology, so you can use low technology. We have medium, and then we also have high technology. So check it out in Annex G, right? So we have here assessments for remote learning. This is Annex G. So we see here low technology. You have options: flashcards, pop-up books, posters, etc. And then we have medium technology, and you can use high technology here. And the good thing is you have their websites here for you for your reference. And the last but not the least, we'll talk about monitoring and evaluation. Right, so the school head shall primarily be responsible for supervising the implementation of this policy in their schools. The school head, attention please. Don't forget to watch this video. And if you want to share this to your teachers, you can go ahead and download the the PowerPoint presentation in the video description. But don't forget, please, to recognize also and help our channel by sharing the channel to your teachers. Right, so ensuring that the provisions are communicated to all concerned stakeholders in the school community. Right, so ask your teachers to subscribe. Right, so you are free to really use my PowerPoint presentation. I'm really doing this to help you with your tasks and to help more teachers. Right, so you can also help me by sharing this channel to them. Right, so the region and the school division offices shall jointly monitor the compliance of the schools with these guidelines. So division office and regional office should actually monitor. The curriculum and learning management division, the curriculum implementation division shall diligently collaborate with each other in ensuring that the provisions of this policy are complied with. Right, so please be aware of that. Attention our division offices, personnel. So at the school level, the implementation of this policy shall be monitored and evaluated at least once every quarter by the school head. So the school head shall prepare a quarterly report that includes challenges and issues encountered throughout the policy implementation. The said report shall be submitted to the division office for collation and analysis, and the SDOs will then prepare a biannual analysis report for the submission to the regional office. Right, so overall policy feedback for the regional offices shall be provided to the DepEd central office to be used in evaluating the policy for continuous improvement of its design and implementation. Therefore, we are advocating continuous improvement for these issuances, right? So if you want to really provide more feedback, all right, so they have provided their numbers here and even an email address. So you see it there on the screen: bld.od@deped.gov.ph. Right, so there's a side note here: DepEd Order 8 series of 2015 still holds true and still in effect. So if there are guidelines there that are not mentioned, so expect that there are still in force. Right, so for the things that we have covered, they are now revised. Okay, so for the inconsistencies that we have talked about, they are now hereby revised. Okay, so again, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have learned something, right? So one of the things that I really found regarding this, really looking forward for the issuance as to the awards and recognition. So we actually have DepEd Order 36 series of 2016 regarding that one, so it's still in force. I'm really looking forward as to how awards and recognition will be done under the new normal. So we're expecting that DepEd will be releasing this soon. Okay, so as of the moment, I think they have a focus on assessment first on this aspect, because the opening of classes is already here. So we need to be aware as to how to assess our learners. Right, so thank you so much for watching. Again, don't forget to share what we have in this channel, and go ahead and spread the news to all teachers so that they'll be able to deliver assessment properly to our learners. So to all teachers, good luck, happy Teachers Day, and I'm very happy to be part of your learning under this new normal. So For more learnings, don't forget to subscribe and like this channel so that we'll be able to be updated in our latest issuances, latest guidelines in DepEd. At the same time, our latest uploads that will help you become a better teacher even under this new normal. Thank you so much for watching and God bless.